Hello, everybody. Welcome to Poppin Corks. Great to see you again. I'm Dan Candy, the CEO of Cork, and I'm joined today by the illustrious and dear friend Cole Knuth, uh, also in Colorado. So I don't always get to talk to Colorado crew. So this is joyous. However, today we're not in the same office, so apparently we did something wrong there. Maybe we can do better next time.
Yeah.
Anyways, Cole, thanks for joining us. We got five questions for you today, as always. Without further ado, I'd love to jump right in, if that's okay
Yeah.
with you.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Sounds good. You and I have spent a lot of time over the last year as we've been thinking about cybersecurity, financial protection. You've spent a tremendous amount of time in the channel. You've got a lot of experience coming from PAX 8 and other areas, and I've always enjoyed celebrating your love of the partner and the community. I'm really curious, what do you see as one of the bigger opportunities for managed service providers in today's, cyber landscape in today's world?
Well, generally, I think one of the challenges is advice, right? Like advisory services, yeah, ironically, I think as the market becomes more specialized and cybersecurity becomes more nuanced, we've gone from break fix to managed services, which is more general outsourced IT. And now there's kind of this trend of MSSP and cybersecurity specialism. But I actually think what's really prevalent on the service side, or at least adding value to the consumers, right, the end clients, is being a technical advisor, right? So like, CEOs are looking for guidance, obviously, on their cybersecurity. So that to them is a foundational relationship or expectation to be delivered by an MSP or an MSSP. What I've noticed that I think is really interesting and nuanced about this is that, the real opportunity for differentiation comes from this need for advice, right? Like advice around tech adoption, efficiencies, um, um, and even growth opportunities on how to use tech, right? So like as AI's exploded, that has obviously made it more prevalent, but this trend's been happening for years, right? Like advising the leadership staff, starting with the CEO, on how they grow and evolve their business and how they use technology at the core to do that. So process operational, system operations, things like that.
I'm going to use that for my second question because that was what I wanted to hear from you. What are the top one or two things that the most successful MSPs are doing differently?
I think a lot of them are it's probably not deliverable initially. So one of the two I would say is not necessarily a service they sell, but more a way they engage. And I think instead of just understanding the requirements from a tech services side and then delivering that expectation, I think the best MSPs are understanding the business, able to map the business to deliverables and the way the systems work to enable that, right? So when you think about like the Microsoft ecosystem and the trends you've seen Microsoft investing in, just use as an example, Microsoft's invested in a lot of line of business type of platforms, right? The investment they put behind Dynamics, the way that Copilot's come on the market. And so partners that are really embracing that are starting with by evolving their relationship with the client. And so they're working with the CSAT to understand how that manufacturer works or how the law firm works so that they can more intrinsically embed themselves in the day-to-day movement of their business, like how the BAU operates, business as usual, and then able to offer advice around that is, creating a collision between the technical side and the operational side, because that nuance I think is something that a lot of CEOs struggle with, and so adding value centered around that, and then obviously creating services that are a segue between that and traditional managed services, right? So consulting is a big arm of like, hey, this is how you go from here to there. So sitting next to the CEO, understanding the business, and then being able to basically play it in kind of a project management style with like, hey, we're gonna do this, and then once we do this, we'll operationalize it with these services or this technology.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And you bring up an interesting point, which is where CEOs are struggling and where managed service providers are evolving in their role in
Right.
guiding CEOs in the C-suite, right? I understand, a good portion of what you and the Yukon team are doing is helping fill that role. And I'm curious, as you've seen the MSP stack explode over the last few years, now that there's all of these tools, right? Arguably, according to
Yeah.
some of our other friends, there's over 6,000 cybersecurity tools, right? What are you going to do
Yeah.
with 6,000 cybersecurity tools?
Right.
And then you got, your view on and expertise on financial protection. So, what do you do with all of these tools? How do you bring it together so that you can really have the sharp, pointy end of the sword to be effective with our partners?
Oh, you know, I that's a tricky one because one thing the explosion of vendors has offered is a lot that meet, that exceed kind of a minimal level of expectation. I think if you went back 6 years ago, the upper echelon kind of had this level of confidence, but also came with a price tag of installation and management. And then you had lower cost products. And I think the lack of focus around the difference between those two, when people were using just general antivirus versus, even an antivirus with a managed service or a SOC, you've seen some degradation and
Mm.
or the inability to show the degradation between the two products. And so I think it's hard to really identify what that looks like at the top of a stack, like what separates good from bad. I think it's really in the way the service is offered, right? Like we know the days of just like selling the inbox and managing a few tools around the inbox is either dead or dying, right? Like if you're managing my IT, I want you to manage all my services. And so, there's kind of a core stack with an expectation that you've given me the best in class products, I'm safe. But then the ability to handle other IT products so that I don't have to worry about it. Like I don't want my COO running off and having to deal with, maybe DocuSign or, an email signature tool or, there's some things that are really nuanced about like the services around it. And I think just making it easy for the business owner to buy and understand the management capabilities of the tech stack. So I guess because maybe I'm non-technical, I have less desire to dive into the technical differentiation of the cybersecurity stack, but more like the value of the stack is offering, anything that solves my problem as a business owner. That's really where I think we see the trend and change is that MSPs are with that consultative approach are offering anything and everything the customer wants so that they can stay the trusted advisor. Right. And that's where I think I've noticed a change in the tech stack, their willingness to look at marketing tools and other tools like that.
I think you nailed it. Thank you for that insight. It has been a blast to watch UConn explode this year. You have been on the road nonstop talking with partners and clients, literally thousands upon thousands of conversations.
Mhm.
What's a trend that you think MSPs must lean into right now before it becomes par for the course or the industry standard? How can our partners stay leading edge and aggressive?
Well, a big part of the motivation behind where we, created UConn and what we created it for was, leaning in and giving a really simple tool for all MSPs to become the trusted advisor. Um, that is probably one of the most prevalent talk tracks I've leaned into is make sure that advisory services are above and beyond the standard delivery of a managed service or IT outsource type of conversation. And I think like the evolution of that requires a different mindset. Like it's not your capabilities to deliver on an SLA or being able to, give your customer ease of access to a service desk or things like that. And so the evolution, I think, has forced this more business-centric conversation. And, I feel like a lot of the conversations we have around Yukon, because we built it for that, right? Like this like tool that's used to show financial liability, which opens a more general conversation. So it's not a cybersecurity score, which there's nothing wrong with those, but it's like, what are the dollars and cents? Like what matters to this owner? how much could they lose if they don't pay attention to these trends and changes in the market? And so that's where I think we've seen the biggest shift, or at least we see the shift happening in the market. A sample size of 1,000, partners engaged and discussed with, you see more and more paying attention and really leveraging this as their core competency.
Yep. Perfect. I I I can only imagine how many relieved and interested uh uh conversations you and your team have been having as you've
Yeah,
released UKON and gone
yeah,
to market with it because
yeah.
it's a big need. Last question. Here we go. Doesn't get, any more tricky than this last one. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Um, One superpower, what would it be? I would read minds for sure. I'd read minds. Like I
How
already love the
come?
art of conversation. If I could sit in a sales call and just like literally hear everything that their nonverbal mind is speaking, like I mean that would be dangerous in so many settings, personally and professionally. I would definitely read minds. That would be my superpower. Telepathic.
You, I think you're already a great husband, and you might all even be a better husband after that one.
Yeah, there you go. I like that, Dan.
Mr. Cole, Mr. Cole, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining me on Poppin Corks. I look forward to shaking your hand the next time we're on the road together, or having a cup of coffee. Wish you and your
Yeah.
whole team at UConn the very best.
Yeah, same to you. Thanks,
Okay,
Dan. Thanks, Cork team.
peace.
Bye.